Door opened when she quickly wiped her tears, covering herself with it, and his gaze shifts to her, and his gaze softens as he spotted her sleeping on mattress on floor. He closed the door as his gaze was fixed on her when he switched on the light, feeling upset looking at her. She was covering herself. Jungkook wiped the tear which unknowingly slipped from his eyes as he slowly walked near her. Ryan, he softly approached her, but she didn't respond. When I'm sorry on behalf of my mom. She won't say this again, I make sure, he said, feeling not in his throat. There is silence for a while when she speaks. You want baby? She asked out of blue and he stared her silently as he looked down, controlling his tears. There is only silence filled in an environment as he took a deep breath before speaking. Let's not discuss this, he replied, and there is again silence from other side. He made feast on his thighs as certain things ached him, and the fear rushed to his body for something he never wants to come true. Were you sleeping here? He asked, trying to maintain his cold voice. Because that's your bed, she replied, feeling heaviness in her throat, and he looked at her. This mattress is also mine, he replied. You won't sleep on both at the same time, right? Her voice breaks a little. When she felt touch on her shoulder, she shut her eyes tightly. Sleep on bed, I'll sleep here, he said, and she removed her divot, staring at him, and both of their eyes speaking pain. Why you are treating me with so much love today? She asked, forcing herself to smile, and he just stared her. Can we talk? He asked, almost verge of crying, and she could feel pain in his voice. I'm sleepy, she replied with heavy throat, and he looked down. No problem, he replied softly. Go and sleep on bed, he added, and she just stared him for a while. Ignoring him, she tried to lay down. Ryan, he stopped her, holding her wrist as she stared him with so much that she will cry in any moment as she removed his grip from her wrist. Don't treat me like this. I'm not used to it and I don't want to, she said, and he just stared her for a moment. But he pulled her in his embrace all of a sudden as she closed her eyes, feeling his warmth. Don't always push me away from you. I swear I hate this. The only reason and sole reason to hate you, he whispers, hugging her tightly. And she closed her eyes. But you always hated me. It came like a whisper. Only if you have to ask me why I hate you, he said, and she brushed her hand on his back. Don't treat me like this, she whispered. Why? He whispers back. Because I don't want to get used to it, she said, and his grip slowly loosened around her as he slowly broke the hug, and while she just stared her. Sleep on bed, he said, avoiding eye contact with her while she stared him. He took the duvet and fixed the pillow, not making eye contact with her when she held his wrist, making him stop, as he didn't dare to look up in her eyes. Looks like you were guilty for something, she speaks with gentle tone, and his chest stiffened as he looked at her with raised heartbeat, being ancient, but she looks down. Sleep on bed with me, she speaks, getting up, holding his wrist, and he just stared her with lots of question. Reason I am saying it's cold and I can't sleep alone into it, she said, and he just stared her, softening his gaze, and she smiled with pain. Come on, you can do this much for me. He remained silent, looking here and there. You should not disrespect my request like this, because when is your last moment with someone you never know, he said, making his heart drop. Ryan, she smiled. Sleep with me like you were sleeping with me for the last time. He gets up, being anxious. What nonsense you are talking, he said, feeling a bit angry and anxious, speaking to his body, and she broke the intensity of the environment with a light chuckle. Don't be serious, she said, and he stared her as she climbed on bed. The reason I am saying because this is the last time I am sleeping with you on this bed. From tomorrow, mattress only, she said, fixing the pillows, and he just observed her. I hope you didn't take Mom's words seriously, he said, and she laid down. I did not. If you said those, I would have. Thank you for taking stand, she said with a smile. Jungkook slowly walked to bed before sitting near her, and she just stared at him as he does too, and she smiled a little. I hope you don't have any other plans with me to do, she said, and with a slight grin, and he just stared at her seriously. Why you always think like that? He asked, and she sighed heavily. Because that's what your eyes says every time you look at me, she replied with a soft grin. Says what? He asked, feeling tired as his eyes felt heavy. You know, he shook his head. It's not what you think. It's not. I know, she said, cutting him off. Every girl knows how a man is looking at her, but you are complicated from starting. Always looks confused, swinging between your feelings. You are not sorted, she said, and he just stared her eyes. You never gave me a chance to be sorted, he replied. You're talking like you know me from ages, she said, chuckling lightly, and he closed his eyes before looking at her. You were sleepy, right? Then sleep, he said, cutting her off. I'll sleep. Come and sleep with me, so that though it can be warm. She asked like an innocent kitten. He stared at her for a moment. He stared at her with so much emotion but couldn't hold the eye contact with her. So breaking the eye contact, he caught up before moving to other side of the bed and slid himself into it, and his back faced her. I have room heater though. You can use it if you need, he said with coldness. But he flinched when her cold feet touches to him, and her cold hands touches to his warm ones. I need your warmth right now, she said, and he eyed on her that why she is behaving so strange suddenly. Why? He speaks, trying to face her, but when she hugged him, resting her head on his chest, and he stared at her. It's not feeling right, Jungkook, she said, a kind of fear audible in her voice. What happened? He asked, and she clutched him tightly. I don't know. I'm feeling anxious. I want my mom. I'm missing her. The pain in her voice was clearly visible. Jungkook pulled her closer, kissing her head. She was the only one who always understood my unknown fears, which I wasn't able to. She continued, and he just listened to her. I never knew that was the last night I'm sleeping with her. Why she left me like that? Why? There's much pain in her voice, and slowly his anxiety faded, and now he just wants to hear all pain and want to soothe them. After her, my only hope was two persons. One left me, and one made me feel alone even I was with him, she said, burying her face in his chest. Then she who came, and when I started to grow my bond with him, wanted to live with my cute little brother, you took me away from him, she confessed. Destiny is always taking everything. Her voice broke. Don't I deserve the people I love? She asked, and he stares her that she's closing her eyes when she was telling, and clutching him so tight as a baby cried. I can't call my people mine. They were mine, but her voice breaks. My Appa was mine, but he is not, she said. I'm not possessive, but I can't share my people with anyone which belongs to me, he said, sniffing. And this was for you. Her emotions peaked here as a tear slid down from his eyes. I swear I can't take one more heartbreak. I don't have much energy to bear it all. I swear I would. He cuts her off. Shh. No one will break your heart, he said, pressing his lips on her forehead as he connected his forehead with hers, closing his eyes. I wish, she whispers, and he kissed her cheek softly. I'm sorry for everything I did. I'm really very sorry, he whispers, and she hugged him more tightly. I hope you mean it, and you did not do what I heard. She muttered the last line in a very low voice. Please forgive me if you can, he whispered with so much pain. She remained silent and hugging him like a baby as he pulled her up gently as if she is so fragile and he might hurt her. He covered her carefully. She did not speak after that and let him handle her the way he wants. He closed his eyes and caressed her hair gently while she sniffed in between, making him check up on her if she is alright or not. As the time passed, he closed his eyes only as his mind flooded with uncountable thoughts. On the other side, she is also just closing her eyes. And the only thing she wants right now is that forget everything and wants her mind to stop thinking because she couldn't sleep even if she is feeling overwhelmed and comfortable, but her mind is not resting. She badly wants that everything she heard is all a lie. The truth is what they are right now. Only she knows how desperate she is. No one can understand what she is going through because if it's true, she might not know what she will do. His eye got stuck on her when she saw her crying, sitting alone. "Sir, I called the other car for you. You can go in that," his secretary said, but his eyes stuck on her as his secretary approached him. "Sir," he approached, but Jungkook stopped him, showing calm. He looked at the handkerchief in his hand, then her. He clutched it tightly in his hand as she wiped her tears, taking her phone out as it rang. "Yes, Appa," she said, trying to smile. "Yes, I'm okay," she said, holding her tears back. "Okay." She hung up the call as her tears dropped uncontrollably. But her broasted as someone sliced the handkerchief with the chocolate on her table. And when she looked up, the person almost walked. As he glanced back, only her eyes met his, as he was wearing mask. He turns back when she is about to approach him. He walked outside of the cafe. She looked at the handkerchief and looked at the chocolate, and that there is a small note on it. "Your eyes are beautiful. Don't ruin it by shedding tears for someone who doesn't value it." Smiled. She looked back for the person, but he already disappeared from there. "Did you get her details?" he asked, and his secretary noted. "She is daughter of Kim Min-suk of Neon's group," his secretary replied, and Jungkook looked at him coldly. "Her name?" "YN." His body got chills as he noted. "YN." "That. I know it was wrong, but I want that. Please make mom understand. That's your responsibility. I will never her letting know that," he said, feeling guilty. "You did that to get her only, but at the end, you were the one who denied doing that contract," he said, putting hand on his shoulder as he looked up. "It's because I knew it. It was wrong, but I was late. I can't force someone to stay with me, can I?" His father smiled. "Why you did that?" "It was ego, obviously. Isn't it?" He looked down. "I was desperate. I was hurt. I was stupid," he said, on his father's side. "But you never wanted to hurt her." He shook his head. "I was mad at that time. I was behaving rash all the time. It's not because of her. It's because of myself. What I did was really wrong. You people encouraged that by doing that contract," he said, feeling low on his father's side. "I became selfish because all I wanted is to see my son happy." He looked up, raising up Rosalind. "Happy I wanted to see heir?" he asked, and his father bit his lips. "Your happiness was the priority," he replied without hesitation. "Why mom is in rush?" he asked, and she sighed. "She has phobia. If she or me died without seeing your kids, she wanted to be grandmother," he replied, chuckling slightly in Jungkook's side. "My wife doesn't want babies, you know that." He nodded, smiling. "I know. She told me yesterday she was crying," he replied in Jungkook's side. "But she is really harsh with words," he said, sighing, and his father agreed. "Oh, from starting she is," he replied, grinning while Jungkook stared at his father, who looks sorted, makes him feel everything is sorted. "Happy birthday, Papa. I really miss you," She recorded the voice messages, hesitated to send, initially sent as a tear slide from her eyes, which she immediately wiped. I really hate you for leaving me alone. You really don't care about me. I didn't make this big mistake, she muttered. Or I did, she whispers. When door opened as she looked, and his eyes met hers, but she looked away, breaking the eye contact as he walked in nervously. Will you come with me to company today? He asked, and she looked at him. Why? He walked near. Actually, a lot of people left to meet you. Also, there is a small celebration of our marriage, he said, and she looked down. What if I say no? Don't say no. He cuts off her. It's a request. His eye approaches her. As she just stared his eyes, and he avoided eye contact from her. Okay. She nodded and he smiled a little. Thank you. He replied, and her eyes searched particularly for an answer, but she couldn't find the answer she is looking for. And she looked down. For some hours only. I gotta go somewhere. Hope it's not a problem for you. No. She nodded as she is about to walk. Where are you going, by the way? He asked. I can't tell you. She replied as she walked, and he didn't ask what. Subin tapped her shoulder as she looked behind. And he smiled at her. How are you? He asked, and she smiled. I'm good. She replied with a soft grin. So you're coming to office today? He asked, and she nodded in tiny, and he tilted his head. Are you upset or something like that? He asked, and she shook her head. No. She replied, you look low. That's why I asked. He said, and she just nodded. Hope Hyung didn't say anything to you again. He said, and she just looked down. When she looked, Jungkook walked. As their eyes met, and his gaze shifted to Subin. You also coming? He asked, and he smiled widely. Of course, he replied, and Jungkook sighed. We are also coming, she said, walking as Noah walked with her, and Jungkook took a glance at them. I heard that there is opening ceremony of your new branch. He asked, and Jungkook nodded. So where are we heading? New one or your current one? He asked. New one, that is there only. He replied. So when Hyung-soo will take tour of your old company, huh? Jungkook looked at her. It was originally planned today only, but some other day, he said, glancing at her as she was looking down, and he nodded, and Minnie corrected her thought. It's looking weird. You both are not fighting today. Only, are you okay? She asked, and Jungkook glanced at her as she nodded. Yeah, I'm okay. She replied in low voice, and Jungkook stared at her for a moment. We can have outing today, but we can't since your son is busy, he said as Minnie looked excited and regretted at the same time. Why? She asked with dead excitement, and Vine gave a look at him. I have some work, she said, giving a cold look to him. Why, Sonny, it would be a great day if we all have a day out together, she said, and Vine remained silent, looking down as Jungkook noticed that there is a kind of sadness visible on her face. It's okay, some other day, let's go, we are getting late, he said, changing the topic. Yeah, definitely, I'll sit in front. Hope Hyung-soo and you don't have any problem, he said, trying to cheer up her. All of them looked at her. She didn't say anything for a while. It's okay, don't mind, she replied, trying to maintain a smile, and Jungkook looked at Sumin. Quietly and respectfully, you all three come in separate car, he said, and Sumin chuckled. I was joking. You can have your privacy, but if Hyung-soo wants, she can come with us if she's mad at you right now, he asked, eyeing on her, and Jungkook gave him a look. Why you all feeling I'm upset? I'm not, she said in Noah's face. Then smile, sweetheart, she said, and Ryan looked at her. Jungkook smiled, looking at her. Your dull face making us feel something is off. Look, Jungkook, he's the most affected one, she said, and she eyed on him. He doesn't care that much, she muttered, and Jungkook looked at her. Oh, come on, Seoni, at least congratulate Ofa. It's a special day, He's getting more and more success. Ask him anything today. He will definitely give, I'm sure. Wherever? She said with excitement, and Jungkook nodded. Of course, but only if she speaks, he murmured, and I looked at him. Okay, take them for outing today. That's only thing I want. She said when Jungkook was about to speak. No, without you we are going nowhere. Come on, Seoni, for yourself, something big. Your husband is rich. She said, winking, and Jungkook stared at her. As Ryan stared at him for a moment before speaking. I'll ask later. She said, breaking the eye contact, and they sighed, and Jungkook also looked down. Okay, we are getting late. We should leave now, he said, and Jungkook nodded. They all walked, leaving them alone as she is about to unlock the car, but Jungkook also did on the same time. As his hand brushed with hers, as she looked up directly into his eyes. Can I ask something? Will you give me? He asked, and she stared him back. His hands reaches to her nose, brushing it softly as Ryan stared him, feeling tinglish inside. You have everything, what can I give you? She replied, removing his hand, but he held her palm, gently brushing her dorsal of hand, and his small gesture made him overwhelmed. Can you fight with me, like you always do? He asked, and she stared him speechless. Can you just smile? He asked, and her gaze kept shifting. If I would do that, you have to give me whatever I ask for. She replied, and there is something in her eyes she is carrying which made his heart beat abnormally. Don't ask something which I can't give you, he said, being anxious as she looked at him again. There is nothing you can't afford, she replied with a smile. They held eye contact, and pushing his fears away, he opened the car door for her. As she sits in, and he just watched her. Everyone clapped when his secretary extended scissors to him to do opening ceremony, and he looked at his father as he gave him a nod. He looked at Ryan, and she was just smiling, looking at the people around her with curiosity. He extended scissors to her, and people around them clapped. As Ryan looked at him with her raised heart, me, he held her hand, pulling her as he handed the scissors to her, and she looked at him shocked. Look, how can I? Go ahead, daughter. He encouraged her, and she looked at Jungkook. My wife will do the opening ceremony, he announced, making her heart skip a beat as she stared at him, utter shock. I appreciate. Please sit down, he said. She looked nervous around as all of their eyes on them. And Ryan stared his eyes, and slowly tears started to build in her eyes. And he looked away, seeing her getting emotional as he held her shoulder gently, making her feel relaxed. She is nervous and overwhelmed. Come on, Insunim, he cheered. As she extended her hand to cut the ribbon, but her hands were shaking, so he held her other hand as she looked at him, feeling so overwhelmed because the person standing in front of her is completely different the person she met. A single tear slipped from her eyes as she cut the ribbon, its gentle trail glistening against her cheek. Before it could fall, his hand was there, catching it with tender precision. She looked up at him, her gaze filled with unspoken emotions, the weight of the moment reflected in both of their eyes. Your eyes, too beautiful and precious to shed these for a person like me, he whispered, and she looked at him shocked as he took out the handkerchief and slid that tear on it, smiling softly as she just watched him with so many questions. Well, a group cheered loudly as he looked back. It's his friends. And he smiled. Sorry we are late, thanks, Dad. If you didn't make it today, I'll make sure you'll never, because you missed our every wedding function. Jungkook spoke and they laughed. We didn't know we will get to witness this side of yours. I would have make it anyhow then. he said, and Jungkook shook his head, smiling. Let's go inside. Ah Hyung soon will get tired of standing, he said, and Jungkook looked at him. So what? Hyung is there. He will pick her up if she asks for. Don't underestimate my brother. He's really gentleman. He's a bit short-tempered, he added while Vine looked down. So we would like to see husband Jungkook, a gentleman. Go ahead, Jungkook. Yeah, go ahead. He also cheered. All other staff and employees cheered as Vine looked down while Jungkook looked at her. Can I? He asked, whispering in her ears, and she looked at him nervous. It's not a big deal, I guess. She looked at surprise as she's about to speak. Jungkook, no. He lifts her up in his arms, making her shut her eyes and clutch him tightly. They cheered and clapped as Jungkook stared at her, who couldn't make eye contact with him. And he smiled as he walked while they followed them, and everyone admired them. And they looked so good together and compliment each other. Wow, so pretty cake, she said, admiring the cake, and Jungkook looked at cake. His brow straightened as he immediately looked at his secretary, and he passed him a guilty pleasure smile as Vine looked at the cake, and now all question getting answered slowly. She looked up at Jungkook, who is also looking at cake. But who is this masked man and girl? He said, scanning the cake, and Jungkook gave him a look. Don't try to use a brain which you don't have. It's just a cake, he said as Subin frowned. No, I guess they delivered wrong one. It's for someone else. Because it's giving vibes some kind of first meet story. He said, still checking. Subin, don't try to know everything. For whom it is, they know, she said, and Jungkook smiled at her. While Vine didn't even move her gaze for a second from him. Vine, you can stare at your husband at home as well. He's all yours only, he said, which made Jungkook to look at her, and she looked here and there. Yeah, cut the cake. Bring knife, Harry, he said, and he nodded as he extended him knife. But Jungkook gestures to Vine as he extended to her. Bowing in tiny, and she took it as everyone clapped, and she took his hand in hers, which made him smile as they blew the candle together and looked at each other, breaking the eye contact. He shifted his focus back to cake as he cuts the cake, and everyone clapped. But Jungkook gestures fine as he extended to her, bowing in tiny, and she took it as everyone clapped, and she took his hand in hers, which made him smile as they blew the candle together and looked at each other. And breaking the eye contact, he shifted his focus back to cake as he cuts, and everyone clapped, cheering for them. He cuts a small piece and extended to her, and she took a bite, and he smiled as he ate the remaining, looking in her eyes. She took a piece of cake as she extended to him, and he stared at her. I want to talk to you, she whispers, and he took a bite. I do too, he whispers back, and he took a small bite as pressed his lips on her temple, making her close her eyes. Don't shed your tears like this. Your tears are my weakness, he said. I know, she replied as she eats the remaining cake, looking in her eyes. And Hyung, he extended the cake to him, and Vine moves a little as they all come over one by one to congratulate them and congratulate him for new beginnings, for most of his business partners and many others. As she watched him from distance, and realization hits her. Nuna, a kid approached her as she looked up, and she smiled at him. Yes, baby, she said with a smile. He extended her a bouquet as she looked at it, and then, who gave this to you, baby? She asked, and he pointed in the direction. As she looked at, he was speaking her through window, and a smile formed on her face. Thank you. Will you do me a favor? Ask that uncle to come to me, she said, glancing at him, and he nodded as he walked. And she looked at bouquet And as usual, there is a note written on smile, and automatically a smile formed on her lips. With tears in her eyes, looked for him because she never met him, never seen him. As she looked at the bouquet, and again there is one more letter in it, YN. As she looked up, and her eyes looked at him shocked and teared up as bunch of emotion burst into her, seeing him after so many years. And bouquet fell from her hand as she ran to hug him and cried in embrace. Why you left me like this? You didn't care about me, she said, kept crying in his arms. I gave you a choice, fuck. But you chose that man instead of me. She broke the hug and looked at him with teary eyes. You can't do this to me, she said, crying. He wiped her tears, breaking the hug. I'm so sorry, Ryan. I can't stand with that man, and I can't continue my any relationship who is attached to that man. I'm sorry, he said, and Ryan shook her head. Please no. He moved back. I came here to say, please call me when you are ready to leave that man. Otherwise, forget about me. Consider me as I'm dead. His last word broke her heart. But he stepped back, showing palm to her, and she froze at his foot as he walked and didn't even look back, wiping his tears away. He walked from there, and she fell on her knees. She muttered as she looked at the flowers and she took them at the smile note she took before tearing them into pieces. Jungkook froze at his foot as he watched her, and initially wiping her tears away, she threw them in dustbin, breaking his heart into pieces. She stumbled as he moved in action but stopped himself. She ran from there, wiping her tears away as he slowly walked and took the letter he put in the bouquet. He squished that letter before throwing it somewhere. Hate you, he muttered, looking in the direction she disappeared. His secretary extended water to her as she looked up, and he smiled at her. If you need anything, let me know, he said, and she smiled and shook her head. Nothing else, thanks, she replied with a soft smile, and he nodded. I hope you're not getting bored, sir. It's a bit busy, he said, and she nodded. It's okay, he's always, she said, eyeing on him, and he chuckled lightly. Not for you, he muttered, and she looked at him frowning, and he chuckled. Sorry? Nothing, and she nodded. How about a board meeting now? He asked, and Jungkook smiled. There he will say no, just like he used to. He gave a lot of hard time back then, he murmured. Actually, no, I mean, we can take a moment and celebrate, so we will do it later. We have all day, he said, and he nodded. Jungkook looked at Ryan, who was constantly checking her phone, and he sighed when his gaze shifts to the person unknowingly who was staring at her. Didn't even blinking, and his brows straightened. Excuse me, he excused himself. He walked near her as she looked up, and he looked at the person, and this time he looked away, stealing glances. Harry, he called his secretary. Yes, sir, he said. Fire him right now, he muttered as Vine's eyes widened. In shock. Wait, what? Why? She said, being shocked, and Jungkook glared at his secretary. Right now, he ordered, clenching his jaws, and she looked at him utter shock. While some of their attention went to him, he said a bit loudly. Didn't you hear that? What I said, Harry? And light tone and Vine looked here and there. Okay, sir, he said, bowing. But Jungkook, he walked from there. What happened to him suddenly? He muttered. Hyung Sunam, I suggest you to go home before Hyung fire half of his employees. His first words. What do you mean? She asked. Hyung fired him because he was staring at you, he said, leaving her speechless. And now, thank to God, if you were a stranger, and what might he has done with you? Why now? You cling to Seoni too much, right? She said mockingly. Sovin corrected his throat. I will be careful from next time, he said, fixing his collar and meaning controlled her smile as Vine's brows straightened. Her phone rings, but she ignored as she walked in the direction he disappeared. Jungkook, what was it? He hugged her as soon as she enters. She looked at him surprised as she tried to break the hug, but he didn't let her. Why you did that? She asked, lowering her tone. Don't ask me, he whispered as she broke the hug, looking at him. You're just staring at me, not a big deal. He can't. I won't allow. I won't allow to look at you the way I look at you, he confessed. But that's wrong, she whispered. He remained silent and she closed her eyes before taking a deep breath. As she looked back at him, and her phone rang again and again, and she looked at him. You're sick, she muttered, and he stared her. Will you answer my one question? He asked, and her gaze is moving. Don't I deserve you? He asked, and her breath hissed as she looked away. You deserve a lot more, she said, and he shook his head viciously. No, answer me. Don't I deserve you? He asked like a stubborn kid, and she looked down when he cupped her face. If I confess you something, tell me. Will you still be here with me? She won't leave me, he asked with desperation, and her phone rings continuously. With two call are they? I have to go, Jungkook, she said, removing his hand who was cupping her face. Why you always leave me at the point where I have to confess you something? He said with this desperation, tightening his jaws. I don't know, she replied, being clueless. Her phone rings again as he loosened the grip. Go. He was first holding his tears back, and she stared him for a while as he turned his back to her. And she stared his back and about to walk but turned and looked at him. Jungkook, she approached him as he looked at her. Closing her eyes, she pressed her lips on his, making her tears slide from his. As he replied back, pulling her closer, he packed her lips and corner of her lips and all over her face. If you do like this, I won't be able to let you go, he whispered, and she pulled back. I'm sorry. Saying this, she walked, leaving him all hurt. He wanted to say a lot. He wanted to talk to her, which is eating him up from last night. But he couldn't say because he's scared. He's scared to lose her. I'm sorry. Vine walked in, gathering the courage as her father looked at her, but immediately looked down as this didn't sound good to her. As she slowly walked. Come, daughter. She showed palm to him as she walked directly to her. Only truth, Mrs. Kim, she said coldly, and she looked down and sighed as she extended the envelope to her, and her father closed his eyes. She took it from her shaky hands as her heart pumped against her chest like a hammer as she took them out. Daughter, I'm sorry. Her father speaks, but her all attention on that paper, reading it. Her lips trembled with pain as she let out a soft whimper, reading the contract which says that they made a deal of $1 million in order to save Neon Script, which has been close to bankruptcy, and in exchange he is giving her daughter to give heir to John. Her hands shook, seeing the signature of those two persons who was close to her heart. One who gave her this life and one who was giving her reason to live and smile every day. Both of them shattered her into pieces as she looked at her father. Why you did that? It's almost like a whisper, and he remained silent. Mr. Kim, why you did that? Daughter. Don't call me your daughter, I'm not your daughter, she said in a little high pitch. Ryan, shut up. She looked at her shocked. I was a thing for you that you sold me, she angrily said as tears falls. How can you do this to your own daughter? She asked, being mad, and he remained silent. Oppa was always right. I was stupid. I was idiot that I chose you instead of him. choose you instead of my own brother, she yelled. Enough, Ryan, she raised her tone too as she looked at her teary eyes. Before putting all the blame on him, know all the truth, she angrily said as a tear slid from her eyes and she jerked her hand. Nothing can justify his action. But you should know all the truth, right? She replied with the same rage. Let it be Eva, but she stopped him. His company is almost bankrupt, and the house you are living was in the condition to be sold. You know why? Because his so-called husband withdrew his all shares from his company the day you rejected his marriage proposal, she bitterly said. This day would never come if you have accepted his proposal then and there only, when he first sent you, she added. Her tears falls like a rain. He was compelled to do that, she lastly said. Chance wanted you to give heir to their family. It wasn't a big deal. You'll be a wife of a billionaire, but you have your own tensions, she added more. Ryan wiped her tears. I'm sorry I'm not like you. I can't marry someone for money the way you did. For me, my morals and values are more important, she said with heavy thought. She looked at her father, and whatever the condition would be, no father would do this to his own daughter, she said with so much pain. Fine daughter, fine daughter, she died, your daughter died, she uttered and he shook his head. Thank you for the truth. I will never show my face to you. Now you will able to see my face again. His tears fell as she shook her head. 7 years ago, your son died for you. Now your daughter. Hope you live happily with your family, she said like a dead corpse. Goodbye. Don't come even if I am on my deathbed. My soul won't get peace seeing you. And